This is a smart light bulb, and this is a smart light switch. And today we're going to go over the pros and cons of both of them. Hey guys, welcome to Tech and More Tech. Today we're going to take a look at smart lights versus smart switches, the pros and cons of both, and when either one is a better choice. If you want a more detailed written version of this, head on over to techandmoretech.com or check the link in the description below, where I give more examples and my thoughts are just more detailed. So let's get started with what is a smart light and what is a smart switch. Very simply, a smart light bulb is just a light bulb that you're able to control remotely through some sort of wireless protocol like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, Z-Wave, etc. And a smart light switch is the same thing for a light switch. Very straightforward, but want to get out of the way. So let's start with the pros and cons of the smart light bulb. Firstly, they can be really cheap. You can get light bulbs for as little as $8 to $10 for a single white LED smart light on Amazon. This is great if you have like a studio apartment or one bedroom or you just want to try it out for like one room at a time. It's very easy to sort of get into that smart home game that way. Of course, they do get more expensive if you want colored ones like a LIFX or a Hue Color. But if you just want one or two lights just to control, you can get it really cheap. Secondly, it's very easy to install. All you gotta do is change a light bulb. You do have to connect to an app right afterwards, but that's usually a pretty painless process as well. But there are also cons to a smart light. Firstly, it can get expensive if you have a larger home with a lot of ceiling lights, a lot of light fixtures, and just a lot of lights in general. For example, my living room has 4 ceiling lights and so does my kitchen. So if I wanted to replace all of them, that would be, at least $8 to $10 per light. But if you're gonna go with a little fancier one like a Hue light or a LIFX light, that's about $20 to $25 a light. Smart light bulbs aren't always an option either. There's certain light fixtures like, let's say, a chandelier or like a ceiling fan light, something like that isn't necessarily a common light bulb connection, or it has some sort of weird geometry to it that makes a regular light bulb very difficult to place in there. Now, the main downside of having a smart light bulb is that it always has to be powered on. So if you have like a ceiling light with a light bulb inside it, a smart one, and it's connected to a light switch next to the door, which is obviously very common, that light switch always has to be in the on position. But then that poses the question, how do I then control the light if I can't turn the light switch off? It's a great question. There's a couple different options. Firstly, you can get something like a remote and place it next to the light switch and then just use that remote to turn lights on and off. You can also use like motion sensors, or you can use like a voice AI like Siri or Alexa if you have one of those in the room or always on you. But then you've essentially created a new problem by solving a first one, which is I want to control this light remotely, but now every time I want to control it, I have to control it remotely. If you live alone, this isn't as big of a deal because you can just, figure out what solution works best for you and you can always sort of adhere to it. But if you have a family with kids or wife, spouse, whatever, or roommates that might not always adhere to these new tech rules that you've been placed, well, then you've kind of lost the functionality of your smart light. So that brings us to smart switches. The main pro of the smart switch is there's no loss of functionality. The switch works exactly the same way as a regular switch does. And then you gain the addition of being able to control it remotely. So if you do have a family or you do have guests over or roommates, that you don't need to have to reteach how to turn on a light, it's a great option. Secondly, even though they're a little bit more expensive up front compared to like a single $8 light bulb, it can be cheaper if you're going to do an entire home. Like I mentioned, my living room has 4 recessed ceiling lights. So if I wanted to replace all of those with like a Hue light or a LIFX light, it's going to be about $80 to $100. Versus I can just replace it with a single light switch, which is about $40. And then I've gained all my functionality. But of course, the light switch also has a drawback. Firstly, it's invasive in the sense that you have to go in, you gotta turn off a breaker, you gotta remove a light switch, you gotta figure out which wire is live and load, and then you have to plug that into your new one and screw it back up. Now, that's definitely not something that everyone's gonna be comfortable doing, rightfully so. Electricity is dangerous. So you can always get an electrician to do it, but then that adds extra costs. It's also not really typically an option for renters. And then another con of a light switch is that if you want colored lights, well, you kind of just have to get colored smart lights. So that being said, where and when should you use a smart light versus a smart switch? I think you can boil it down to a few scenarios that cover 99% of people. So for smart lights, if you're a renter, it's probably your only option. If you don't have a huge home, you just want a couple lights in specific locations, it's probably going to be the cheaper option. It's also better for lamps or anything that isn't connected to a light switch. So if you have one of those standard Target or IKEA lamps with one shooting up and one sort of hanging off to the side for like a reading lamp, that's a very good option to do. Smart switches, on the other hand, can pretty much be used everywhere else, and I would encourage to have them be used anywhere else. Anywhere where you have a light switch that controls lights in like a main room, main area, that's where I would replace the light switch with a smart light switch or a smart dimmer, depending on what you have. So there you have it. Smart lights versus smart switches, a quick sort of guide to the pros and cons of both and where either one is sort of best suited. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button for more content to come, and leave some comments down below. I'd love to hear where you guys use smart lights and smart switches, what you have found in your experience. Until next time, see ya.